Welcome to my channel. I hope you like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to knit this basic beanie hat. Now, this hat is for children up to teen size with a head circumference between 20 and 22 inches and a total length of about 8.25 inches. Now, it's got a foldable brim, and I used sports weight yarn. I used 43 grams for this size. Now, make sure to comment below and let me know if you want me to make other versions of this hat, like for smaller children and adults. I'll gladly go ahead and do that for you all. Now, if you prefer written pattern, check out my Etsy shop. I'll leave the link to my Etsy shop in the information box below. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, let's get started, and thank you so much for watching. Okay, to knit this hat, these are the needles that I'm going to use. These are circular needles. These are 16-inch, 3.5 millimeter knitting needles. Now, you can also use longer needles and just use the magic loop technique to knit the hat in the round. We're going to be knitting the hat in the round, so I prefer to use these shorter needles. Now, this is the yarn that I'm going to be using. Here's the brand. It's Good Wool. This wool here is classified as sports weight. You can also use number 2 for US or 5-ply for New Zealand and Australia. I did a small sample here in the round. So for my gauge, using the 3.5 millimeter knitting needles in 2 inches, I have 17 rows and 11.25 stitches. To make this hat, the first thing that we need to do is we need to cast on our stitches. I'm going to cast on a total of 116 stitches here for this hat. This hat here is for my son. He's almost 9. He'll be 9 in December. So with his head circumference of about 21 inches and a length of 8.25 inches, I need to cast on a total of 116 stitches. Again, this is all based on my gauge, and I already gave you that information. So here, to begin, let me show you how you need to cast on your stitches. I'm going to cast on my stitches using the long tail cast on method. So what we're going to do here is just wrap the yarn around both needles like this 20 times. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, I have enough yarn for about 20 stitches. So we're going to double this up. We're going to have enough yarn for about 40. Double it up again. We have enough yarn for 60. Double it up again. We have enough for 80. Double it up again. We have enough for about 100 stitches, and we're going to double it up again to have enough for about 120 stitches. I only need to cast on 116, so I'm going to add a little bit more. It's best to have some left and not have to repeat this again. So here, make a slip knot and insert both needles. Now here I'm going to use another needle because these are too short, so I'm going to use the same size here. So insert both needles like this. This here is coming from the yarn that we just measured, and this here is coming from the skein. Now insert your index finger and open up the yarn, and we're going to go from left to right, and we're going to grab a loop. So like this. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. This is how I'm going to cast on a total of 116 stitches. So I'm going to continue and cast on my 116 stitches, and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished casting all my stitches. Now here at the end, I'm going to add an extra stitch. So I'm going to cast on a total of 117 stitches. This last stitch here does not count because I'm going to use this stitch here to join in the round. So now carefully remove that extra needle if you have an extra one. So now what we're going to do is we need to join in the round. So I'm going to push my stitches here to the beginning on this side and on this side. Now to join in the round, I'm going to actually turn this like this. Here's the last stitch on my right hand, and this is the first stitch on my left hand. So to join in the round, I'm going to bring this first stitch to the right needle and bring the last stitch that I cast on, stitch number 117, over this stitch. And I'm going to drop that stitch. So drop it and then pull your yarn, and now we're joined in the round. Now I'm going to place a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the row. And now we're going to start and knit the first row. Now for the brim, I'm going to knit one, purl one. Here to begin, I'm going to knit the first stitch, and I'm going to purl the next stitch. Knit one, purl one. Knit one, purl one, and this is how I'm going to continue all around for this first row, where I just knit one stitch and then purl the next stitch. This is a 1 by 1 ribbing, so I'm going to continue and finish this row, and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of this first row. This is where I knit one, purl one. My last stitch here is a purl. Make sure that your last stitch is a purl. So now pass your stitch marker for row 2 up to row 20. You're going to repeat the same thing. This first stitch is a knit, so we're going to knit. The next stitch is a purl, so purl the next stitch. So knit one, purl one. Knit one, purl one. This is how I'm going to continue up to row 20. So let's finish this part, these 20 rows, and then I'm going to come back and show you what we need to do next. And all you're doing is just knit one, purl one. I'm almost done with the brim. I did a total of 18 rows. I know I mentioned that you needed to make 20, but no, only make 18 rows. Now what we're going to do next here is I'm going to make 3 more rows, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to make this. This is so that it's easier for the brim to fold and stay folded. So to do this, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to slip the knit stitch, and I'm going to purl the purl stitch with the yarn in the back, slip the next stitch, and then purl the next stitch with the yarn in the back, slip the next stitch, and purl the purl stitches with the yarn in the back, slip the slip stitch, and purl the next stitch. This is how I'm going to continue for a total of 3 rows. This would be row 1. When I finish this row, I'm going to come back and show you how it looks, and then I'm going to show you how to continue with the second row, and then you're going to do the third row. So all we're doing here for this row here is you slip the knit stitch and you purl the purl stitches. Here's the knit stitch, you slip the stitch purlwise, and then purl the next stitch. Slip the stitch with the yarn behind and purl the purl stitch. Continue like this. I'll meet you at the end of this row. I finished this first row where you slip the knit stitches purlwise and then purl the purl stitches. Now for the next 2 rows, you're going to repeat the same thing. You're going to slip the knit stitches purlwise with the yarn in the back and purl the purl stitches. Again, slip the knit stitches purlwise with the yarn in the back and purl the next stitch. Slip the knit stitch purlwise with the yarn in the back and purl the next stitch. With the yarn in the back, slip the knit stitch purlwise and purl one. With the yarn in the back, slip the knit stitch purlwise and purl the next stitch. And that's how you're going to continue for this second row, and then you're going to do the same thing for the third row. We're going to do 3 rows here. After we're done, I'm going to show you how it looks. The brimish is going to stay folded. So finish these 3 rows and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I finished making these 3 rows here. This is going to keep the brim folded. Now, if you don't want to do this here, what you can do is just go ahead and make 16 rows exactly in the same way how we did here, knit 1, purl 1, which is what I'm going to do next here. So after we finish these 3 rows, we're just going to knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. We're going to do this for a total of 16 rows. So continue like this. I'm going to place a stitch marker here to mark this first row. And again, you're just going to do this for 16 rows, which is the same thing we did here. So I'm not going to show you that. Just knit 1, purl 1, just like I'm doing here. I knit the knit stitches and I purl the purl stitches now. Continue, finish these next 16 rows, and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I finished making these last 16 rows. So for this part here, so far we have done 18 rows of knit 1, purl 1, and then we did 3 rows here where we slipped the knit stitches purled wise, and then we purled the purl stitches. We did this for a total of 3 rows. This creates this fold here to keep the hat folded, and then I did 16 rows here, which is what I just finished. Now for the rest of the hat, we're going to continue with the stockinette stitch, and that is where you knit each stitch for every row. So we're going to do this for a total of 28 rows, and then we're going to start to decrease. So just continue with the stockinette stitch where you knit each stitch for a total of 28 rows. I'll come back and show you how we're going to start the decrease. Okay, I did a total of 28 rows here for the body of the hat, and now what we're going to do is we're going to start to decrease and shape the crown of the hat. So to do this, we're going to need to place some stitch markers first. So here's my beginning of the row marker. So in between these 2 stitch markers, I have 1 stitch. So do the same thing, place a stitch marker or the beginning of the row marker, then a stitch, and then a stitch marker. Between this stitch marker and this one here, the first one, I have 28 stitches, and same thing, I have 1 stitch in between these 2 stitch markers. Between this stitch marker and the next one, I have 28 stitches, and again between these 2 stitch markers, I have 1 stitch. Between this stitch marker and the next one, I have 28, and between these 2 stitch markers, I have 1 stitch, and here at the end I have 28 stitches. So I have 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, each one with 28 stitches, and I have 1 stitch here in between the stitch markers, and I have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So to continue here and start the first row of decreases, we're going to decrease in one row, and then in the next we're going to knit. So every other row we're going to be decreasing. So here's the beginning of the row. I'm going to pass this stitch marker, and I'm going to knit this center stitch, pass the stitch marker, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit 2 together. So I'm going to just knit these 2 stitches together. Now I'm going to knit up to the last 2 stitches before the stitch marker. So here I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Now I have the last two stitches. Here I'm going to work an SSK. That means a slip, slip, knit two together through the back. This is a left leaning decrease. So to do this here, I'm going to slip the first stitch purlwise, slip the second stitch purlwise. Now return the stitches back to the left needle from back to front. This is going to change the direction of the stitches, and then you can knit two together through the back. There is another way to work this SSK, but this is how I'm going to do it for my hat. Now pass your stitch marker, knit the center stitch, pass your stitch marker, and here I'm going to make a decrease. So the decreases are going to be before the stitch markers and after the stitch markers. So here you just knit two together. Now I'm going to knit again up to the last two stitches before the stitch marker. So that's 1, 2, 24. I have 2 stitches before the stitch marker. I'm going to make an SSK. So slip purlwise the first stitch, slip purlwise the second stitch, return them to the left needle and knit through the back. Knit two together through the back. Here's the SSK. Pass your stitch marker, knit the center stitch. This center stitch between the stitch markers we're always going to knit. Pass the stitch marker, and here make your second decrease. So knit two together. Now here for the next section, I'm going to knit up to the last 2 stitches before the stitch marker. So that's 1, 2, 24. Now I have the next 2 stitches before the stitch marker, make an SSK. So slip purlwise, return the 2 stitches and knit 2 together through the back. Pass your stitch marker, knit the center stitch, pass the stitch marker, and here I'm going to knit 2 together through the front. Now I'm going to knit up to the last 2 stitches again, so that's 1, 2, 23, 24. Here are the last 2 stitches, make an SSK. So slip the first stitch purlwise, slip the second stitch purlwise, return these 2 stitches back to the left needle and knit 2 together through the back. Now this completes the first row of decreases because we're at the beginning of the row now. So I have completed a complete round of decreases. That's why these stitch markers here are in a different color than the other sets here. They're in green. Now at the end of this row we have decreased 8 stitches. That's 108 stitches at the end of this first row of decrease. Now pass your beginning of the row stitch marker, and for this second row what I'm going to do is I'm just going to knit all around. So knit the center stitch, pass the stitch marker, and knit all around. We're going to decrease every other row. So this second row here is not a decreasing row. We just knit all around, and at the end of this row I'm going to have 108 stitches. Now continue, finish this second row, and then I'll come back and show you once again one more row of decrease. I finished the second row. In this row, all I did was just knit all around. Now I'm going to pass my beginning of the row marker here, and I'm going to start row 3. In this row, I'm going to decrease. So here at the beginning, just pass your stitch marker, knit the center stitch, pass your stitch marker, and knit 2 together through the front. Now I'm going to knit up to the last 2 stitches here before the stitch marker. So I'm going to knit 1, 2, (22). I have the last 2 stitches before the stitch marker. This is where we make an SSK. So remove the first stitch purlwise, the second stitch purlwise, and return these stitches back to the left needle and knit through the back. Pass the stitch marker, knit the center stitch, pass the stitch marker, and knit 2 together. Again, I have the next section. I'm going to knit up to the last 2 stitches. 1, 2, (22). I have the last 2 stitches before the stitch marker. This is where we make an SSK. So remove the first stitch purlwise, the second stitch purlwise, and return these stitches back to the left needle and knit 2 together through the back. Pass the stitch marker, knit the center stitch, pass the stitch marker, and knit 2 together. Now we have the next section. Knit up to the last 2 stitches. That's 1, 22. I have the last 2 stitches. So here we make an SSK. So slip, slip, purlwise both stitches, return to the needle, and knit 2 together through the back. There, now this completes this third row. In this row we have decreased a total of 8 stitches. So at the end of this row I have 100 stitches. Now from here on you're just going to continue and repeat these 2 rows, 1 row of decrease and the next one where you just knit all around. So for row 4 I'm going to pass the beginning of the row marker, knit the center stitch, pass the stitch marker, and then just knit across. At the end of this 4th row, I'm going to have 100 stitches. And remember that you just decrease every other row, and when you decrease by 8 stitches. And that's how you're going to continue for the rest, just repeating these 2 rows. At the end of each row of decrease, you're going to decrease by 8 stitches until we have, I don't know, 8 or 4 stitches left. Continue watching. I will let you know exactly how many stitches I'm going to have left. Now keep in mind that as we continue and make decreases, this part here gets smaller and smaller and you have less stitches here. So it's going to be a little hard to work with these short needles. So what you can do is use longer needles and just use the magic loop technique to knit this part here in the round, or use double pointed needles. I think I'm going to use longer needles since it's more comfortable for me. So I think I'll do that once I can't work with these needles anymore. So just keep that in mind as you work these decreases. Now continue. Let's finish this part and then I'll come back and show you how we're going to close the top of the hat. I just finished row 24. I'm almost done with the decreases. In row 24, all I did was just knit all around. Row 23 was a decreasing row. At the end of that row, I had a total of 20 stitches. And then for row 24, I knit all around and I have a total of 20 stitches. So now for row 25, this is a decreasing row and this is what we're going to do. Now, in between the stitch markers, I have 4 stitches. We have, here's a stitch marker, we have 2, 4. Then I have 1 stitch in between and then 4 again. So in total 20 stitches. I wanted to show you what you need to do here for row 25 because it's going to be a little bit different. We have a couple stitches left and I am using longer knitting needles. These are the same size and I'm using the magic loop technique to knit in the round. So here to begin the row, we're going to knit 1, pass the stitch marker, and here we're going to knit 2 together. And then I have the next 2 stitches. Here I'm going to make an SSK, so slip purlwise, return your stitches back to the left needle and knit 2 together through the back. Now pass the stitch marker, knit the center stitch, pass the stitch marker, knit 2 together through the front, and then SSK. Slip, slip, knit 2 together through the back. Drop that needle, put that stitch marker back, turn, push your cable, pull the needle from the back, and we're going to continue on this other side. So here I'm going to knit 1, pass the stitch marker, knit 2 together, and then SSK, and then knit 2 together through the back. Pass the stitch marker, knit the center stitch, pass the stitch marker, knit 2 together, SSK, and knit 2 together through the back. And this completes row 25. Here at the end of row 25, you should have a total of 12 stitches. We have 12 stitches. Here at the end we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes. Now for row 26, you're just going to knit all around. And here we can remove all of these stitch markers. We don't need them anymore. So knit all around. Actually, I'm going to keep them because I still have 2 stitches in between. So in the next row, I'm going to show you what you need to do. So just keep them for now. After we finish the next row, we can remove them. So this would be row 26. I am knitting all around. Turn, pull that cable. Pull the needle from the back and knit. Here's the end of the row, row 26. I have 12 stitches. Now I'm going to decrease for one more row, so this would be row 27. Let's see. Actually, no, I'm not going to decrease anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of these stitches, but first I'm going to cut my yarn here If I make one more decreasing row, I think this part here is going to have like a thing on top, like a topper. So we don't want that. I want a nice flat top here. So cut your yarn, leave a nice long tail. And with a yarn needle, we're going to remove all of these stitches. So in total, I did 26 rows and I have 12 stitches left here. So here's the last stitch that I knit. I'm going to pass the first stitch through this needle, remove that stitch marker, pass the next one, remove that stitch marker, and you're going to do the same thing for each stitch. Make sure that when you pull, leave a loop here. I'll show you why in a minute. Turn here. So hold that loop. And finish removing all of your stitches and remove your stitch markers. Here's the last stitch. Pull the yarn. Okay, remember I told you to hold this loop here. Just insert the needle through this. This is going to form a knot there. And now you just pull and all of your stitches are closed. Perfect. I'm glad I didn't do that last decreasing row. I think this here is perfect how I wanted it. And that's the top of the hat. Now all you do is just put this through the center here. Bring it here to the other side. That's how it looks. And just hide your ends all around. There is no right or wrong way of doing this. Here, what you want is for your yarn to be nice and secured all around and the hat doesn't open. Let's see how it looks. Perfect. Here's the top of the hat. Here it is. The hat is all done. I'm going to go ahead and block this and then I'll come back and show you how it looks. Here's the finished hat. I went ahead and blocked it, which is just washed and just laid it flat to dry. I absolutely love this hat. I like the way how it fits on my son. It's perfect. It's nice and soft. Although it's wool, it's super soft. I like this wool. It's very soft and warm. Now let me give you some measurements here. I know it's going to be a little bit different because once you put it on, it does stretch a little bit. So let's see, the width. It's about 22 centimeters, which is about 8.75 inches from top to bottom. Let's see, it's 8 inches, which is a little bit over 20 centimeters. Now, I'll go ahead and have this written pattern available in my Etsy shop, Crochet for Baby store. I'll leave the link down here in the information box. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, so this was today's tutorial. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.